An Extra Knife at Dinner, a Gabrielle Ibrahim mystery. An audio series by Patricia Asedegbega. Episode 5. Gabrielle tried the number for the umpteenth time. How long would the man be unavailable? She was getting increasingly worried. Everything that had occurred with Antonia had been so surreal and bizarre. She felt like she had no control over what had occurred, unable to really make decisions or know exactly what to believe. And it was a feeling she hated. What if Chooks was avoiding her calls? Gabrielle was not a conspiracy theorist, but she was struggling to make sense of everything. Had she made a terrible mistake? Antonia had looked at her, not saying anything, and following an impulse, Gabrielle had said she would go with them. Chooks's face had not revealed what he had been thinking, but she had felt that he wasn't pleased. Still, he had not said a word. In the car, he had asked both girls to wear the blindfolds that he provided. They had taken them off after he told them that they could, so they did not see how they got to the building, situated in what looked like a vast terrain in the middle of nowhere. A man had come out, and Chooks and the man disappeared behind the huge metal door that had no handle on the outside. Gabrielle had studied it. One probably had to be buzzed in or have some sort of key. There at least seemed to be a lock. "Where exactly do you know him from?" Antonia had whispered anxiously to Gabrielle. "It feels like I'm doing a lot of trusting, simply to keep from being arrested. We have no idea where we are, or if this person is who he says he is." The women had automatically huddled closer together. "He runs the clinic we were taken to after the party. Well, Sandra and Mark were, and I followed. He examined my stab wound and spoke to me after that," Gabrielle explained. "But have you looked into him? Researched him online? I'm beginning to think that going to prison won't be such a bad thing compared to all I'm imagining could happen next." Antonia had looked around her as Gabrielle took out her phone and proceeded to look for information online. The results popped up immediately, both about his clinic and his speciality. He had trained as a general surgeon in the USA and then expanded into more specialities. He was a regular publisher in some medical journals, and the standards of the clinic had been highly commended. He seemed to have a lot going for him when judged solely on his merits. "It won't be the first time a highly respected individual goes completely off the rails," Antonia had urged as the men approached. "Gabrielle, you need to get me out of here. Whoever tried to kill you, it wasn't me." "Antonia, this is Edmund Salami, your new boss," Chooks told her. "You are to follow every single instruction you're given, because this is the only option you have. Aside from an immediate arrest, of course. If you give him any trouble." There had been a silence, and the other man made a gesture with his arm. With one last look at Gabrielle, Antonia followed him. Gabrielle had watched the scene in turmoil. It was sad that this was the closest she had ever felt to her half-sister. The screen of her mobile lit up, and snapping out of the memory, Gabrielle quickly picked up. "I'm sorry, I've been in surgery back-to-back, and one of the patients might need to go in again, so I have a very busy night ahead," a tired voice said. "I understand. I'm sorry, I've just been on edge all day, and you're the only one that I can talk to about this," Gabrielle said. "I got nervous when I didn't hear back from you. Yesterday was extremely difficult." "I know. I haven't had much time to think. But I did mean what I said. I'll help as much as I can. I'll call you tomorrow, and we can talk properly," Chooks replied. "Have you eaten? I can come over for a bit and bring you dinner. I'll stay out of your way, I promise, but I'm just going crazy here, so even 5 minutes of your time will reassure me." There was a pause on the line, and Gabrielle thought that perhaps she had been too pushy, which was really out of character for her, but she felt like everything was falling apart, and she had a number of people to consider. It really wasn't just about her. "I was going to get something from the canteen." "If you can offer a better alternative," the man finally replied. "I'll be there in 45 minutes. Thanks a million." Gabrielle quickly switched off her laptop. It was almost 6:30, which was when Uki would be leaving. Her personal assistant was staring intently at her screen when Gabrielle stepped out of her office. "Can you please order food from the usual place before you leave? They can deliver here," Gabrielle asked. "What should I order? Do you need me to stay on longer?" Gabrielle paused. She had no idea what the man liked. "No, that's fine. I'll be going out." "I don't know. Just get a selection and tell them to pack it all up, as I'll be taking the food with me. Better still, tell them to have everything packed in 10 minutes. I'll be stopping by to pick it up myself." "Thank you. You can go after you make the call. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, and please ask Donatus to be ready in 10 minutes. Exactly 40 minutes later, they arrived at the clinic. Donatus got out of the car and got the food out of the boot. "Thank you so much. Please help me take it in. You can go home after that. I'll get someone to pick me up."
"Madam, I can wait and take you back. It really isn't a problem,"
the man said as they walked to the entrance. Gabrielle reassured him that she would be fine. There were 2 different nurses at the front desk for the evening shift, and when Gabrielle approached, one of them directed her where to go. The doctor had left instructions, and she was told that he would be with her shortly. She must have dozed off on the sofa as the noise of someone moving around woke her up. She opened her eyes to find Chuck seated at the table where she had left all the food.
"I didn't want to wake you."
"Exactly how many people did you bring food for?" Chucks asked as he opened the bags, looking shocked. Gabrielle smiled and moved to the table.
"So, I spoke to a forensic pathologist friend of mine," he began, after eating in silence for a few minutes.
Gabrielle almost bit her nails in frustration, as those minutes had dragged on forever.
"I sent him the images of your wounds, and he'd like to examine you and your dress. The wound isn't fresh, but he might be able to tell us something about the knife used. He normally assists the police, so if there's anyone that can shed light on the injury, it's him. I'll text you his details."
"What was that place you took us to?" Gabrielle asked. "Who was that man? Why was everything so secretive? How's Antonia?" Chuck studied her for a moment. She could tell that he was deciding exactly how much to tell her. "I'm not being curious. I won't tell a soul," Gabrielle insisted. "Look, at the moment you know things that nobody else knows about me. Things that could tear my family apart. More than it already is." She sighed and closed her eyes for a second. "Everything around me feels like it's being held together with sticky tape, and I'm well aware that it's a temporary patch."
"It's a facility for people that need to disappear. Get themselves together. Heal," Chucks explained. "Sadly, it's mostly women and children. There are a few men there, but in a separate part of the property. If anybody finds out where it is, a lot of people would be in danger. Edmund set it up some time ago, after a patient he was trying to help, who kept saying that she had nowhere to go, was killed by her husband. I've been acting as their doctor ever since I returned to the country."
"I don't know what to say." Gabrielle remained pensive for a moment, thinking about how difficult some people had it. "But is that the place for Antonia? I mean, what if what she told us was a thoughtfully fabricated story? She could very well have planned it all in the event that she got caught. Maybe she has another mobile with which she concluded the transaction. It sends shivers down my spine, calling it that. What if she met this person, paid the rest, and was at the party just to make sure the job was done? I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know her enough to know how far she's willing to go."
"Well, she couldn't be in a better place," Chucks countered. "The security there is tight, and Edmund has given orders that she's to be watched at all times. She's also going to work and earn her keep, and unknowingly, we'll be speaking to our psychologist and psychiatrist, who will evaluate her and give us a report. We'll get answers, one way or the other. Listen, I have to go now, but how about you speak to everyone that sat at your table that evening? Let's see the guy in forensics, and we'll reconvene in a few days. I'll visit that nightclub and see if I can find out anything. Also, the guest list would be important. Could you get your hands on it? Find out who was there that shouldn't have been. Thanks for dinner. The doctor smiled briefly as he looked at the numerous unopened containers. His phone rang and he picked it up. From what Gabrielle heard, it seemed like he was needed urgently. With a curt nod in her direction while giving instructions over the phone, he hurried out. Gabrielle contemplated all the food with a sinking feeling. If Antonia is guilty, can we handle it? She wondered aloud.
What a pleasant surprise. Gabrielle, I wasn't expecting you.
Ngozi got up from behind the desk she had been working from and escorted Gabrielle to the more comfortable corner settee set in her office.
Have you finally decided to give me the interview I've been begging you for?
The woman looked at Gabrielle with hope in her eyes, and her visitor laughed as they exchanged a hug. I'm afraid not, but I promise that the first time I sit down to give a proper tell-all interview, it will be to you. Gabrielle smiled and winked at her. I came to check up on you, but especially, I hear congratulations are in order.
Yes, they are. Thankfully, all is going well,
Ngozi replied.
I was so scared after the party, but I took a few days off and actually just resumed work yesterday. It was so scary, especially when Mark and Sandra got shot.
She shook her head as she remembered.
Yes, it was, Gabrielle agreed. Then everything went crazy and everyone started running.
It really could have been much worse, but I'm just glad that you're okay.
The robbers seemed to know that there'd be a collection of people gathered there worth stealing from. It was a private affair, yet they still went to the right place. It does make me wonder. I'm not at all surprised, really. A few people announce their weekend plans on social media, and people talk, Ngozi said thoughtfully. Mark's mum didn't budge on the number of guests, but people in her circle knew that it was her birthday, and some didn't get invited. You could say that there were some bad feelings, and it was rubbed in some faces. Poor woman, what a way to end the day. You work in media. Do you know the people that were taking photographs at the entrance and asking the guests for a quote? Gabrielle asked. I haven't seen the photographs anywhere. Shouldn't they have been published by now?
Ngozi frowned.
Yes, I found that strange too. We aren't a gossip magazine. We do cover social events in a tasteful way, as you know. We're more about interest pieces from a human angle. However, from time to time, we do get contacted with a juicy story and buy photographs exclusively. I think a photograph of you and some of the guests would be worth a very tidy sum. But you're right, I haven't seen anything anywhere.
Could you find out which agency was there and why the photographs haven't been released? Gabrielle asked.
Ngozi observed her with a puzzled look on her face. Is there something bothering you? I mean, other than being threatened at gunpoint, which was quite traumatic on its own. I got the feeling that our table was being targeted especially. I know that it sounds paranoid, but we did get most of their attention.
Ngozi rubbed her very tiny bump, and Gabrielle smiled. It was amazing how, even so early, the protective instincts of a mother kicked in. It must have been extra scary for Ngozi that night.
I'm just trying to make sense of everything, Gabrielle replied. 1 minute we got up to toast the celebrant, and the next we were surrounded by 5 armed people. One for sure was a woman.
Ngozi sighed.
Yes, and I remember how 3 of them stuck to our table most of the time. Except when one of them left to help another get things off the guests. I've never been in a scarier situation.
Sandra's bent on getting her bag back. To be honest, that bag's worth a lot of money, but if it's been sold now, it'd be easy to trace the seller, Gabrielle said.
It's a collector's item, though. It could go for well over 15 million naira.
Ngozi whistled, her eyes wide.
Gabrielle tried to remember the scene of that evening. She had been standing in between Sandra and George's date, and all her attention had been focused on the scuffle that ensued when the female thief made a grab for Sandra's bag. What if it had been then that she was stabbed? What if they were sent by the person Antonia paid? Gabrielle's heart sank. It all pointed back to her half-sister. There did not seem to be another suspect. "I was staring at Sandra and I didn't pay attention to the other guests," she said. "Was anything else stolen from our table? I know that they went around everyone's." I could hear the women gasp and complain, but what went missing from ours? Because now that I think about it, why was the most valuable item not taken from me? My wristwatch was worth a lot of money. Not so much the earrings or the necklace that were stolen. I designed them from stone and silver, but the watch was part of the collaboration with the Swiss house. It was worth over $400,000. "What? So you practically had the most expensive piece of jewellery on?" Ngozi asked. Gabrielle realised that she had to be more careful. She could not put the focus on herself by giving out so much information, though Ngozi was at the bottom of her list of suspects. She could not think of any reason that the journalist would orchestrate what had occurred at that party. It was not an ostentatious piece, very delicate and discreet, but you'd never know the materials it was made of just by looking at it, she explained. I just kept it in my safe all the time and thought I could take it out, that it was a safe environment. But of course it turned out to be anything but. Also, maybe because my dress had a sort of cape kind of top, it was probably hidden from view. I didn't even want it. It was a surprise. Only 10 watches were designed by me, and each had a minute difference. The evening before the collection was released, the CEO took one out from the display cases, the one with the green emerald dial. It did come with a marriage proposal, which I refused, and he insisted I keep the watch to remember our collaboration. She chuckled at the memory. Ngozi was staring at her, enthralled. "No! I can't believe it. You have material for the covers of a whole year of magazines. You're like an encyclopedia." "What was taken from the others at our table?" Gabrielle asked again. "I know Alex, George and Nnamdi had to put their watches in the bag," Ngozi replied. "Alex and Mark's cufflinks as well, I think. I lost my earrings and necklace, and I really hope I get them back. My dad gave them to me for my wedding, and I intend to leave them for my daughter. If not this one, then the next baby. Or the next." She grinned. "You didn't mention George's date. Who was she?" Gabrielle asked. "I was introduced to her, but barely exchanged more than a few words with her. Did she have to give up anything?" "Naomi was her name. I didn't catch her last name. From what Nnamdi told me later, she and George had been seeing each other for a few weeks. Apparently she wasn't the +1 that had been invited originally. You know how George normally has more than one lady friend at a time. She works in a bank, that I do remember. One of the thieves pointed at her earrings. It was just before the woman at the table of the impressive 5 tried to make a run for it. Then that shot was fired, and we all stood still. That was when they ordered us not to move. But then Mark and Sandra were shot. I didn't see if Naomi handed over the earrings, as I couldn't take my eyes off Mark and Sandra. It really makes very little sense." Ngozi looked perplexed as she tried to recall. "They'd taken what they wanted from them by then, so why shoot them?" "Yes, they had. We were all looking at the woman who ran for the door when the first shot rang out," Gabrielle remembered. "I didn't see what had happened. I heard the second shot before I saw it hit Sandra and Mark, and I can't even say who shot them, as my attention was elsewhere. Everyone was trying to go unnoticed by the robbers. I do hope the police get them now, not just because of Sandra's bag, but also for what they did, and could have done. Can you put out word that you'd like to get the photographs from the party? I'm sure the police are looking into every single lead, but amongst your contacts, I mean. Let it be known that the price is irrelevant. I'm sure you know people who know people." She trailed off, and Ngozi nodded. After that, the conversation drifted onto other subjects, Gabrielle's mind going at 1,000 miles per second. It was interesting how people remembered things after a while, because she was sure that the second gunshot came just seconds after the first. Almost like the first had given the opportunity for the second to be fired. Everyone had gone down, seeking cover as the robbers shouted that they were to remain still before exiting the room. Gabrielle remembered looking around and seeing both Mark and Sandra on the floor, with blood on their clothes. At that very moment, the memory of making a movement to shift the glass at the edge of the table left her cold. Had she not done that, she would have been hit, as she was in line with Mark and Sandra. Was it all a coincidence, or had 2 attempts been made on her life in one evening? Gabrielle had spent an hour in the company of William, the forensic pathologist, and from his demeanour it was obvious that he was not used to dealing with live patients. He had promised to get back to her with as much information as possible about the weapon used in the attack, while making it abundantly clear that he could not promise a concise report. It had been 2 days and she had not heard back from Chooks. Gabrielle knew that he had a lot on his plate, but she hoped that he would not forget about her. There wasn't a lot of time left before her parents came back, barely 2 weeks. Gabrielle's head ached from thinking about all the work she hadn't been able to get done after her visit to William. He hadn't dismissed Chooks' belief like she had hoped, so she could stop investigating. But then if he had, she would not have been able to forget what Antonia had done. Either way, it seemed she was on the losing side. "Gabby, thought I'd swing by." Sandra opened the door unceremoniously, with a flustered-looking Uki following hastily behind her, an indication that Sandra had not waited for the personal assistant to even try to announce her. "So, I bought us lunch from the restaurant you liked so much, and I thought we could have a proper chat," Sandra said. "Mark was sent home yesterday, and I can finally breathe. I'll be going back to work tomorrow myself. Look, I know you said it jokingly, but I really want to see if we can find anything out about the people that did this. It's about the fact that we almost died. I didn't stop to give it a proper think before. I have connections in the police department, and I know how swamped they are. These robberies are occurring too often, and sadly, there have been a number of fatalities. It's not just about the bag. You know that although I have a good salary, I'm not at the level of people that can afford something like that. But it meant a lot to me when you made it, and the sandals as well. I couldn't put a price tag to it, so no, I won't let it slide. Will you help me?" Gabrielle observed her friend. Sandra had always had a thing about getting to the bottom of any worrying issue. If someone said something to her and she felt the person was being deceptive, Sandra would ask questions until she got a confession that satisfied her. Gabrielle nodded, and her friend emitted a shriek of delight. "I was hoping you'd humour me, so I got the guest list and the name of the party organisers, as well as the party planner that was there that day. I'm thinking I could pay them a visit." "And interrogate them?" Gabrielle asked. "Sandra, you suspect that it was an inside job. The criminals had information about the party, the layout, etc. Going in to question them will only put them on alert. No, we need to send someone they don't know to pose as a client and ask for the specific planner and get them to find out all we want to know." She saw that she had an incoming message, and it was from Chooks. She picked up her phone and read it. "We need to speak to the friend that confirmed that Antonia tried to kill you, and the one that went to the party with her. Can it be done this evening?" "I'll arrange it and let you know. I'll try to get them to come to my house, using some pretext or another," Gabrielle wrote back. "Gabby, leave the phone alone. This is important," Sandra protested. "You make a good point, though. So who can we send? The bait has to be someone with some standing to rouse the attention of those criminals. We summon police there, and when they break in again, voila, they all leave in handcuffs. Now, Who'd be crazy enough to put themselves into that kind of trouble? She frowned. They were interrupted by a knock. Uki came in with a parcel, and from the way Sandra smiled, Gabrielle knew that she was not going to like what her friend was about to say. "Uki, I believe." The young woman nodded and looked expectantly at Sandra. "Do you have a birthday coming up? An engagement party to plan? I don't see a wedding ring, so that could well be a possibility. Or for a friend, a hen night. Or I don't know, a celebration of sorts." Sandra grinned at the young woman. Uki looked at her, not understanding the question, and Gabrielle decided to step in, not wanting in any way to coerce her staff. "Uki, the thing is that we're looking into what happened at the party, and we believe that the thieves somehow got information that helped them get inside the house," she said. "We wanted to check out the company that organised everything. We were wondering if you minded going over there and taking a look around as a prospective client. Not what you signed up for, I know, but if you're up for it." "I don't have a celebration coming up, but my mum will be 50 in 6 months, Uki said. "I could go and get a quote from them, tell them that they come recommended, and ask to speak to the specific planner. I don't mind at all." Uki was writing it all down as she spoke, so Sandra gave her the company name, as well as the planners. Uki was very observant, Gabrielle thought. If there was anyone who would notice details, it was her. "Uki, you can throw into the conversation that you have a venue, a very exclusive one at that. Say you're not willing to disclose the address just yet. You can say you're being cautious after what happened at the party, but that it's in Banana Island," Gabrielle told her. "If they're connected to the robbers, that'll definitely spark some interest, and they'll try to secure the contract and get more information out of you. If negotiations proceed, we'll discuss what to do next. We won't be putting your mum in any danger. Also, just say you'd rather not give your name, not till you make a decision about who to go with. I trust you not to give any information just to get it out of them. I'll write you a cheque for a deposit. You can use it if you feel it's necessary on subsequent visits, so they know that you're serious and that money's not an issue." "Yes, madam. I'll do my research and ask the right questions. Will there be anything else?" Uki asked. "No, thank you. You've been really kind. Should you reconsider participating in this crazy plan of ours, please feel free to say so. Sandra here did not offer her secretary, and she's a trained lead investigator, so don't in any way feel coerced," Gabrielle added. "That one?" Sandra scoffed. "She'd give the game away in the first 5 minutes. No, your Uki's very loyal and meticulous. I've noticed how dedicated she is to you. Nothing gets past her." I was going to say no one, but that hasn't been the case on a number of occasions. She winked cheekily. Uki left, and a moment later, as Sandra took out the food and proceeded to set it up on the corner table, Gabrielle excused herself and went into the adjoining office. "Uki, I need you to find out exactly what cutlery was used at the party," Gabrielle said with some urgency. "I remember there were 3 knives at each place setting on our table, if I'm not mistaken. I need you to take a photograph if you can't get them to give you a set, but it has to be the exact same ones. This is strictly between us. Sandra can't find out. Send the photograph to me. This bit is the most important part of your mission." "Yes, madam. I will get you the set, and I promise not to steal them." Uki smiled, and Gabrielle reciprocated before turning to go back inside. She was sure that Sandra had got some fried plantain with rice she had seen her unpack. Too many years of friendship assured her of that fact. Sandra did not eat rice without fried plantain or moi moi. Gabrielle paced nervously around the living room. Chooks had not arrived, but Funke was about to. She had been able to get both Bisola and Funke to agree to come to her parents' house an hour and a half apart. Given that some people were firm subscribers to African time, the gap assured her that uncomfortable coincidences would be avoided. 5 minutes later, Pauline announced the arrival of Chooks before letting him into the living room to join Gabrielle. His presence gave her comfort for some reason, and she smiled at him when he walked in. "Long day? Please, have a seat. What can I offer you?" Gabrielle asked, as Pauline waited.
"Just cold water, thanks. I had something to eat at the clinic,"
the man replied, and Pauline nodded and made to leave the room. "Pauline, I got some suya and peppered snails. Please bring that and some bread." "Thank you." Looking at the man, Gabrielle saw that she had gauged him well. He seemed to skip a lot of meals and needed to be reminded to eat. "I got the guest list if you want to take a look at it." He nodded, and Gabrielle handed him the sheet of paper. She had made a photocopy of the one Sandra had brought to the office. She studied Chooks. He raised an eyebrow, but made no sound. "I take it you know someone there?" "Who? Is it someone we should be concerned about?" she asked.
"My ex-fiancée and her mother, Rachel Eremo and Mrs. Yolanda Eremo. Rachel's mother's a very influential businesswoman, so it does make sense that she'd know the celebrant and be invited. She's always at any event that's newsworthy."
Pauline, coming back into the room, stopped Gabrielle's next question. Chooks's jaw had hardened when he spoke of the Eremos in his usual matter-of-fact way. It had probably been a bad break-up. Gabrielle looked at him squarely, as if seeing him for the first time, and he returned her gaze without flinching. It was a look that did not welcome more questions. She had to admit that the good doctor intrigued her. To stay up to date with Patricia Asedegbega's work, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.